In our last episode, we cleared the demons from the basement of the Repcon Test Center. This made the way clear for Jason Bright and his followers to head to a service tunnel which leads to a rocket launch pad. It was here where we learned that Jason Bright's great journey involved shooting himself and his followers into the sky. We also learned that because Chris Haversom was not a ghoul, Jason Bright was not going to allow him to join them. Instead, they've been using him for the past 2 years to make this whole journey possible. After telling us this, he heads to the launch pad to get ready to blast off into the sky. But before he can, he needs us to work with Chris one final time to prepare the rockets for launch.
Jason says that I am to cooperate with you on the final tasks necessary to launch the Great Journey.
So, the Great Journey will use those rockets?
Obviously. It's taken months, but I've nearly got them in working order. Soon they'll take us to the far beyond. I was skeptical at first, of course, being a man of science. But Jason is certain, and I believe in Jason.
What can I do to help?
I was close to completing work on the rockets before we were driven into hiding on the top floor. 2 components were missing. A quantity of isotope 239 igniting agent, and a set of thrust control modules. The igniting agent is highly radioactive and decays quickly. That's why we can't use the drums that leak down on the launch pad. It's no longer potent enough. I need you to find an intact, shielded container of the igniting agent. As for the thrust control modules, they were custom built for these rockets. They won't even launch without them.
At this point, we can choose which of the 2 items we'd like to retrieve for Chris first. For now, I'll track down the igniting agent.
Very well. We don't need a huge amount. 2 to 3 liters should be enough.
Can you give me any tips for my current task?
Repcon has been ransacked so many times by scavengers, it's hard to know where the components might turn up. If they turn up. Jason has mentioned some industrial ruins to the east that are supposed to be highly radioactive.
Any other tips you can give me?
I'd start by visiting local junk merchants or traders and see if that turns anything up.
To leave, we retrace our steps and then take the first left. This points us west, where we can climb a ladder to the Mojave Wasteland. We arrive topside, near to a sewer hatch that leads back down to the basement. But the only path out is right through a highly irradiated field. So it's good to hug the rocky outcrop here to sneak by without getting irradiated. So to find the atomic fuel, Chris told us about a rumor of industrial ruins to the east. He also said we could talk with scavengers who may have ransacked Repcon in the past. We find one of these local scavengers as we follow the road north from Novak. After a short distance, we find a junkyard to the left with 2 cars propped against each other as a gate. Sitting on a strange hunk of metal right outside the door to the junkyard shack is Old Lady Gibson.
Hi there. I'm Old Lady Gibson, or so they tell me. I've got odds and ends for sale, and I'm pretty good at fixing things, too.
Why do they call you Old Lady Gibson?
Well, I'll give you a hint. They used to just call me Gibson. I hope you can figure out the rest. I don't mind, to be honest. Living long is a real accomplishment these days. Remains to be seen if I end up dying peaceful in my bed.
What can you tell me about Repcon?
Sometimes it seems like I spent the better portion of my youth in that old wreck of a building. Me and my hubby, may the man rest in peace, used to scavenge there. If it weren't bolted down, you can bet we took it and sold it. A lot of the scrap you see around here is from Repcon, even my favorite chair.
She is sitting on the favorite chair that she just mentioned. This chair just so happens to be the O from the Repcon sign. If you paid close attention when we arrived in episode 1, you saw that the sign was missing an O. Well, here it is. Old Lady Gibson has been sitting on it for God knows how long. Did you ever salvage any containers of radioactive material from Repcon?
Certainly did. Hubby and me had an old rad meter to help us tell the difference between what you could salvage and what'd kill you. I kept a glowing container from Repcon around here for years, serving no better purpose than a nightlight. Damn thing wouldn't sell. Then along comes the most peculiar-looking fellow, all decked out in a yellow radiation suit, of which he was proud all out of proportion. The man outright asked if I had anything radioactive for sale. Imagine that. But he paid handsome for that jar of goop. Only saw him that once. He said something about heading over to Clark Field to put his suit through its paces. A strange one he was.
So, sounds like this guy in the yellow suit has what we need. She said he went towards a place called Clark Field. If we follow the instructions that Chris gave us, we should find the place by walking southeast of Novak. Sure enough, after a while we see some ruins in the distance, and lying on a road right outside is a body in a yellow suit. These are the remains of Mr. Radical. On his body, we find what we need, isotope 239 igniting agent. We also find Mr. Radical's journal and a radiation suit. Day 1. Love the suit. Can scavenge anywhere now. Screw the rads. I hereby christen myself Mr. Radical. Get it? Ha! Day 4. Suit passed first test with flying yellow colors. Overnight visit to Yucca Mountain. Didn't go too deep because there's something big moving around further down the tunnel. Rad level high enough even where I was, and I didn't feel a tickle. Go, rad suit, go! Day 5. Vomited all morning. Didn't splash on suit or I'd be pissed. Must be something I ate. Day 9. Exciting! Ran across old woman's scrapyard. Bought glowing container for measly 50 caps, heading for Clark Field to prove the suit at higher rad levels. If it holds up, I'm gonna pop this jar of goop open and pour it all over me. I bet I could swim in this stuff if I had enough of it. Oh yeah! Well, sounds like Mr. Radical had unrealistic expectations of what his rad suit could do. He began to get sick from radiation poisoning, and he thought it was food poisoning. He mentioned an overnight visit to Yucca Mountain. In our world, Yucca Mountain is a real place where the United States created the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository. Yucca Mountain was to be one of the places where the United States stored all of its nuclear waste, but the project was ended in 2011 when the United States Congress stopped federal funding. It's interesting, though, that Mr. Radical said that he heard something big moving further down the tunnel. This is a bit of a tease, as Yucca Mountain is not found in Fallout New Vegas. I guess we'll never know what strange, dark, giant beast had moved into Yucca Mountain. But we quickly learn what moved into Clark Field. When we followed the road south to discover Clark Field, we see that it was infested with golden geckos. After quite a tough fight, we get rid of them. Exploring Clark Field, we don't find much. We see the corpse of a pack Brahmin on the road to the southwest, and littering the ground around his body is some purified water and stim packs. We find a few catwalks leading up to some tanks, but there's nothing here. All we get by walking around Clark Field is advanced radiation poisoning. With the isotope in hand, we can head back to the REPCON test site and open the sewer grate down into the tunnels. Heading back to Chris.
Have you found the components we discussed?
I found an entire container of the igniting agent.
Yes, that's the stuff. And the container's shielding must be intact or you'd be dead by now. Now all I need is the thrust control modules.
Can you give me any hints on where I can find the control modules?
Scavengers wouldn't know the value of the modules just by looking at them. If you know any junk dealers in the area, I'd start there.
Scavengers again. Well, maybe Old Lady Gibson got her hands on these as well. Heading back to Old Lady Gibson, we can ask her if she has any thrust control modules from REPCON in stock.
As it so happens, I do have some thrust modules, but they're expensive. 500 caps worth of expensive.
We can either pay the 500 caps or pass a barter or speech check of 50 to either say 250 caps, unless you think you'll find another buyer soon for such specialized parts, or, but you're gonna cut the price to 250 because I'm just that charming, right?
Ha! Yes, you are quite the smooth talker. What the hell? 250 it is.
250 it is, here you go.
Pleasure doing business with you.
With the thrust control modules in hand, we can head back and tell the good news to Chris Haversham.
Have you found the components we discussed?
I found the thrust control modules.
Indeed you did. And they seem to be in excellent condition.
So, Chris, what all do you do here?
I'm the Flock's resident engineer. I've always been good with machines. Jason says the great journey would have been impossible without me.
Why don't they let you work down on the launch pad?
When I joined the flock, Jason made it clear that he wanted me to supervise the repairs, not do them myself. It would be a waste of my gifts to work on just one system at a time. From up here, I've been able to supervise the entire project.
You know, Chris, the radiation down there would kill you because you're human.
I thought we were past all that, Smoothskin. But you just can't resist the chance to mess with me. Typical human. I was human once, you know. Grew up in Vault 34, northeast of here. Nice upbringing if you like assault rifles and target practice. But oh, you prefer machines that don't shoot people? Not so nice then. Who should maintain the Vault's reactor? Hauser? Mitchell? No. Make it Haversam. He likes machines. Haversam won't mind getting irradiated. Haversam won't mind mutating. He's already ugly as it is. Haversam won't mind when his hair starts falling out after a few years. There's no connection, Haversam. You're neurotic.
Wait, you left your vault because you were going bald?
Bald? You call this bald, Smoothskin? I'm a monster. A monster!
We can leave it at that, or we can pass a 50 speech check to say, Jason told me himself, the great journey is for ghouls only. You're not going.
Oh, God. You're telling me the truth, aren't you? Oh, no. How could they do this to me? For 2 years. My God, I've been a joke to them. Do you have any idea how easy it'd be for me to sabotage those rockets? That'd be a joke, huh? One hell of a joke.
We can respond one of two ways. We can egg the man on by saying, come to think of it, sabotage is a great idea.
Then bring me sugar bombs. 3 boxes should do the trick.
If we bring him the sugar bombs,
I'll mix the sugar bombs into the fuel mixture before they launch. They'll never suspect a thing until it's too late.
or we can dissuade him from killing the Bright followers by saying, that would be murder, Chris, and you're no murderer.
What, do you think I'm too stupid to pull it off? I know enough to get their rockets working, don't I? So I can make them fail, too.
It's not a matter of smarts. You'd never forgive yourself.
Like I could forgive myself for getting duped like this? They used me, and now they'll throw me away.
They'd take you if they could, Chris, but you'd die.
And dying would be worse than this? Used up and thrown away like garbage?
They're gonna revere you as a saint, Chris.
Oh, so I've redeemed the human race, is that it? What a crock. The human race can't stand me.
That's not true, Chris. You're all right.
So, you want me to accompany you on your adventures across the wasteland, is that it?
No. But there is a little town called Novak down the road.
Life among humans again? That's what you're suggesting? I guess it's the only chance I've got. I can't believe I'm agreeing to this, but I'll give it a try. I'll get Jason and his flock on their way, and then I'll head for Novak.
If we encouraged Chris to sabotage the rockets, he turns around, walks to the loudspeaker, and says,
The rockets are ready, Jason. Ready to carry you and your little clan on the great journey. Bon voyage.
If, however, we talked him down and convinced him to go to Novak, he instead says,
The rockets are ready, Jason. The great journey can begin. Good luck, I guess.
And if we chose not to tell him about Jason's plans, he says,
We have everything we need to launch the rockets, Jason. The great journey can begin.
No matter which option we chose, at this point, Jason Bright addresses his followers.
Gather all. May the Creator guide my words and help me speak true. The Almighty Creator has seen fit to answer our prayers. The time has come for us to board the rockets and begin the great journey. Though it may seem that all humans despise us, the Creator has seen fit to instruct us differently. The journey ahead would have been impossible if not for the intercession of 2 human friends, one new, the other a long, abiding companion. To our new friend, we say thanks, and promise never to forget how we cleared from our path the demons who sought to stay our journey. But to Chris, we owe more than thanks. Chris, you have made this great journey a reality. From this moment forward, you will be remembered as the saint of the great journey. We shall never forget you. I ask that you forgive us, Chris, and give us your blessing. And we bestow ours upon you. Seekers, board the rockets. Take your seats. The great journey awaits. To the promised land we go. To the far beyond.
Incidentally, you see that corpse down there? I toggled clipping to head on down there to discover that this was the body of Harland. If we manage to keep Harland alive, he dons a spacesuit and joins the other Bright followers on the launch pad. Despite everything he said about Jason Bright, at the end of the day, he's still a follower. Strangely enough, if he ended up being killed by the Nightkin, at this point, his body teleports to this location, donned in a spacesuit and everything. Now, if we didn't tell Chris about Jason's plan, he learns from Jason's final speech that he's being left behind, and the news hits him hard.
Did you hear him? My God, you were right all along. I'm no ghoul. They were just using me.
At this point, we get dumped into the same dialogue tree where we have to talk him down from murdering his friends. Another option here is to simply call him pathetic and say no wonder they're leaving you behind.
Leave me alone. Everyone else does.
Which locks us out of any further dialogue with Chris.
Leave me alone.
But if we convinced him not to murder his friends, and instead to go to Novak at this point, he turns around and runs down the tunnel towards Novak. This leaves us with the task of initiating the launch sequence. The Bride followers all board the spacecraft, and we need to head up to the control tower. But before we do, we find one extra spacesuit lying out on a shelf in this room. It's a two-piece set with the spacesuit helmet and the suit itself. The spacesuit has higher radiation resistance than a radiation suit, giving us rad resists of plus 40. The helmet, however, has no stats, but it does have a DT of 4. The entire ensemble looks right out of a cheesy science fiction movie. It's pretty great. To get to the launch tower, we retrace our steps back through the tunnel, into the Repcon facility, up the middle staircase to the east, into the lab, and at last we see that the door to the south, which was previously locked, is now open. This is the door to the Repcon test site. We find ourselves in a floating pod overlooking the launch dome. We see a large console to the right called Navigation Controls, but to launch the rockets, we face south towards the dome and punch the big launch button. That, of course, was Ride of the Valkyries by Richard Wagner, a song that became associated with aerial warfare by Stanley Kubrick in his movie Full Metal Jacket. In the movie, there's a famous scene of helicopters flying to this music, which is likely the inspiration of the scene we just watched. With that, we gain Novak fame, and we complete Come Fly With Me. Now, the events that take place here at the Repcon test site have great ramifications for the nearby town of Novak. If we choose to kill everyone in Novak, we get the following game ending.
Despite their vigilance against potential attacks by the Legion, the citizens of Novak were no match for the courier. The motel and Dinky the dinosaur were left vacant, a rare stop at best for travelers along Highway 95.
If we choose not to complete the quest Come Fly With Me, Novak gets the following ending.
Though Novak was a low-priority target for the Legion, many of Novak's citizens died in its defense. In the weeks that followed, feral ghouls, overflowing from the Repcon test site, ravaged the weakened town.
If we choose to help Manny Vargas by simply killing all the ghouls we find here, including Jason Bright and his followers, we get the following ending.
Though Novak was a low-priority target for the Legion, many of Novak's citizens died in its defense. With no other communities coming to its defense, Novak would eventually fall to the Legion's persistent attacks.
But if we complete Come Fly With Me by sending Jason Bright and his followers into the sky, and if we side with any other endgame faction except the Legion, we get the following ending.
Though Novak was a low-priority target for the Legion, many of Novak's citizens died in its defense. In the weeks that followed, several Bright followers returned to Novak to help restore its defenses, allowing it to remain independent of NCR.
So the Bright followers returned. We did not send them to their deaths. But there are two other endings. Remember that navigation console to the right? If we access it with low intelligence, we see a bunch of numbers and words on the screen, but none of it really makes any sense. We have the option to mash the keys randomly, and if we do, we don't think we accomplished much, but we feel better. If, however, our intelligence is high enough, we see that the console displays a wealth of information concerning the predicted trajectory of the rockets. We have two options. The first is to set the rockets to crash into one another. Choosing this option, we lose karma. And what we're about to see is the same end result we get if we allow Chris Haversham to sabotage the fuel tanks with sugar bombs. If we choose this ending, we still gain positive fame for Novak, for after all, we still got rid of the ghouls. But the town of Novak gets the following ending.
While the destruction of the Repcon rockets appeared to be a boon to the salvagers of Novak, the benefit would never be realized. Radioactive fuel from the wrecked ships seeped out and contaminated the area. Salvagers were forced to move on, and the town was abandoned.
But the final option is to examine the navigation data further. If our science skill is high enough, we succeed. And examining the trajectories a little further, it looks like the computer is set to take a non-optimal route to the specified destination. We surmise that with minor alterations, we can plot a course that will take them about 12.5% closer to their intended destination. If we choose to make the change, we gain karma and successfully modify the path of the rockets. But we see the same result as if we had simply helped them out. However, choosing this option unlocks a special ending that we can only gain access to if we also side with the Legion.
During the Legion's attack on Novak, Bright followers returning from their long pilgrimage assisted in its evacuation. Though Novak eventually fell to the Legion, many citizens of Novak were able to escape, alive and intact.
When we return to Novak, we find Chris Haversham walking around. But if we chose to sabotage the rockets, he has something to say about it.
You saw the rockets explode, right? It turns out I was lucky they couldn't take me on the great journey. Do you have any idea what went wrong?
We can own up to it and say, I sabotaged the rockets.
You bastard! Those ghouls declared me a saint!
Chris then turns hostile, but even though he wields a gun, he doesn't draw it. He runs off as if we're the ones who attacked him. However, his flight does not last long. After simply zoning in and out of one of the nearby rooms, I found Chris walking around as if nothing had happened. I can then have the same conversation with him. And here we can choose the other option. We can say, oh, it must have been some sort of mechanical failure.
I suppose there was always that risk. It's just that Jason was so certain.
On the other hand, if we convinced Chris not to sabotage the rockets, we also find him walking around Novak. But this time, he's in a much better state of mind.
Welcome to Novak. It's not very exciting here, but the people are friendly enough. My engineering skills have been coming in handy too. I've got plenty to do. Thanks for telling me about this place.
We can then go into the Dino-Lite gift shop and head to the dinosaur's mouth to tell Manny Vargas that we successfully got rid of the ghouls.
You have any luck with the ghouls? I'm counting on you.
The ghouls are no longer at RepCon.
Really? Unbelievable, man. I knew that wasn't gonna be easy. But I had a good feeling about you. You look like you've been through a lot.
He then tells us the information about the man we were looking for, the sole reason we came here to begin with. But we'll cover this in another video on another day. But this leaves one final question. Where exactly did Jason Bright and his Bright followers go? We know that they survived. In 2 of the ending slides, they return back to Earth and help defend the town of Novak. So maybe Jason Bright wasn't crazy at all. And if he's not crazy, does that mean his visions are true? If so, who was the creator? Who gave him these visions? Could it possibly be Atom? We have a few hints as to where he went. He tells us he's going to the far beyond, and he tells us that where he's going, there will be so much radiation that it will kill Chris. Now, he could have been talking about the launch pads, which were covered with nuclear waste spill, but perhaps he was talking about space. After all, the sun emits great doses of radiation that can kill you if you're not protected. Now, they were wearing those spacesuits, and I suppose they could have given one to Chris, but perhaps where they were going, they would have been doused with so much radiation that not even the spacesuits could have saved Chris. And the spacesuits are another hint in and of themselves. Why would they need to wear spacesuits if they weren't going to space? We get another clue when we talk with No Bark Noonan, the crazed hermit who lives in Novak. When we ask him if there's anything interesting happening in the area, he says,
"Folks will tell you that they seen ghouls up near the rocket factory. Sensationalist hooey, cooked up by superstitious yokels, seeing phantoms of their own imagining."
Who do you think is actually at the factory?
Ghosts. Commie ghosts who don't know they're dead. Hoping to steal our rockets so they can fly up and paint them own pink and draw a Lenin face on it. I seen one of them disappear and reappear before my very eyes. Although, being a scientist, I have to admit I might have just blinked for longer than usual, what with the shock of seeing a commie ghost and so forth.
Now, these are mad ramblings, but there's a lot in here. He describes the ghouls as commie ghosts, ghosts who don't even know that they're dead. Well, these guys certainly aren't commies, but a being that doesn't realize he's dead? That's kind of a great description of a ghoul. A ghoul's body no longer ages. It's in a permanent, half-rotted state. It's almost like the ghoul's consciousness is forever clinging to a corpse. The ghoul doesn't know that he's dead, so he just sort of sticks around in his dead body. And maybe No Bark mentioned the moon here because he knew that the rockets had been programmed to fly to the moon. Maybe Jason Bright and his followers went to the moon. Our final clue, I believe, comes in the name of the quest. The name of the quest is Come Fly With Me, a Sinatra song. You know what else is a Sinatra song? Fly me to the moon. That's right. Good old Blue Eyes gave us the final clue. But those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to know yours. Where do you think Jason Bright and his followers really went? Did they go into orbit? Did they go to the moon? Or did they land somewhere? Somewhere outside the Mojave Wasteland, only to return when they were needed to defend the town of Novak? What choice did you make in your gameplay? Did you allow Chris Haversham to sabotage the fuel tanks? Or did you just kill them all before they even got into the rocket? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games. If you want to make sure that you don't miss my next video, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter to catch up with Oxhorn news. That's where I announce any delays that I have in my video production or when I need to skip a day. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.